Were you born here?
Yes, I'm Angelino, born and raised in Los Angeles. Yes. My dad came from Iran during the revolution in the 70s. And he came here, he didn't know the language, he didn't know anything, right? And he came for only person from his family. All my blood family is still in Iran except for one of my cousins who just came out here. But went to Cal State Northridge. If you're familiar, you're not familiar, but that's the valley. Anyway, went to Cal State Northridge, met my mom, this black woman, right? They got married, they had me, hello, and I'm I'm Blursian, right? Blursian. There's not that many of us. There's not that many of us, and you know, they got divorced, but had an incredible co-parenting relationship. And my dad got remarried to a Persian woman. My mom ended up having more kids with a black man, and I am the only one that's mixed, and I have two other siblings that are full black, one that's full Persian. I'm the oldest, and we're all brothers and sisters. We don't play that step nonsense. We're brothers and sisters, and you know, and I embrace both of my sides, my blackness, and I feel like my blackness and my Iranian culture bring a strong sense of just right? So identity, culture, resilience, history, legacy, and so community, you know, these things are just built in my DNA, right? Work ethic. And understanding really an immigrant story, and also a black woman's story, and this idea of commitment to excellence, right? And just being your best self and showing up for yourself, right? And for others. So yeah, I'm the oldest of four, and I speak Farsi. I read, write Farsi. My parents, I started divorced. I was 1 week with my mom, 1 week with my dad. It was like a full Persian household and a full like American household, like back. I didn't realize how much I had to adjust and just switch up. And in high school, I lived with my dad full time, and you know, I was incredibly close to my dad. And you know, he passed away a few years ago, before I had kids, and it just rocked my world. And the grief is we have to do a whole thing about grief, but um, my gift to my kids is the gift of language. So I teach them Farsi, and I only speak Farsi to them. So these little chocolate, little not my little black little kids who also have Persian in them, understand that they're Iranian as well and speak Farsi, and like I'm teaching them how to read it and write it and all the things at 2 and 3 years old. They speak Farsi.
Your name, is it your maiden name?
My name is really Arameh, and my dad would say Arameh. My mom would say Arameh because I'm mixed, you know. And so anybody who's maybe from like, any has like Latina or anything with any other thing than American can probably say Arameh, you know, Arameh. But Americans, they say Arameh, and I kind of go from Arameh. And then Anvarizadeh is my my name. My Arameh Anvarizadeh is my dad's name, and so when I graduated and everything I've been doing was in Anvarizadeh. So when I got married, even though I have Crockett as my last name as well, I still have Anvarizadeh. And my dad only had girls, so how to keep his legacy alive too, right? Some things in Farsi they don't even have words for in English, like tarof and stuff like that. But I will tell you, we don't even have it culturally. Tarof, it's funny. Tarof is like Americans, we say no, and no means no, right? Do you want some water? No, I'm good, you know. But in Iran, it's like no means like yes. Like you have to say no a thousand times. They're going to continue to offer it to you. No is like a game you play. Like no, I don't want this. No, 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 no. But it's like yes, keep offering it to me, right? So when you keep on saying no, you're like, you're taught offing. This is taught off, right? And it's like, so sometimes when I'm with my friends who might be Persian, but we're growing up here, we're like, no taught off today. If you want something, just say you want it. Don't say no. I don't feel like going through the whole song and dance of saying like, you know, or even when you're paying for a meal, right? You make sure like you pay for the meal. I mean, they cannot pull their card out or nothing, and we say no, 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 no. It's like it's taught off, right? Like you cannot allow them. So you can't even explain it in American. Like because if we
Off is like the final no.
taught off is like the game of saying no. It really means yes. It also means no. I don't know what honestly. I don't know what it is. You just have to be ingrained in the fact that like no doesn't really mean no ever, but you don't want them to ever say yes. So you just do it. You just give them the water, you pay the bill, you do everything even though they say no. Like I want I this is so terrible. I can't even explain it.
It's so.
It's like you can see her face like what is this?
So this is crazy because my father's from the Dominican Republic, right?
Do you speak Spanish?
DR, and I don't. I mean, we were just talking about that, right? Like the history of your language and just embedding your culture, and it's just like once I became like just aware of how second generation or first generation or just other Americans like kind of embrace their culture, I was like, why didn't I have Spanish in the household? Like, why wasn't I right? No, so we talked about this, and a lot of what his philosophy was, he wanted his children to speak the perfect English. He wanted us to, one, have, the best education, want us to, get as far as possible. And I just realized it really wasn't part of our upbringing.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to you, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, but it's, to me, that's such a fuller experience, right? Like you're not just taught necessarily how we think in this country and how we go about things, and bringing into know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know that in a way. It's like I know that no really doesn't mean no, especially like in healthcare. It means not right now. But I encounter so many therapists who will say no, they said no. They said, they shut that down. They shut this idea down. And I'm like, okay.
Push a little bit more.
Yeah, and that stopped you? You know?
Yeah.
Right. And it's that culture. When I go back to the Dominican Republic, it's like, yeah, no definitely means not right now. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I have a whole thing about my whole part of my work, most of my work, all of my work is rooted in cultural responsive care, gender affirming care, like inclusive care, and to be able to be culturally fluid and culturally humble and culturally responsive in how we care for our clients and populations that we serve is rooted in saying, oh, I might not know everyone's culture, right? But I'm going to be responsive to try to understand a little bit more about yours, right? Even Black culture, you're a Black woman, Afro-Latino woman at that, right? And we, from being from the Dominican, and where were you raised, by the way?
In New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yeah.
I'm a West Coast girl. You're an East Coast girl. Right. It's completely different cultures, but we still have Blackness as a similarity, but there's intracultural differences too, right? And so I think it's so important when we think about the cultures that we embody and the intersectionalities that we hold, that we remember that our clients have that as well. And so I think that's part of what I'm saying. Part of my DNA is this community, and that's how you build community and belonging, right? But I know.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I heard that you don't like the term cultural competence.
Have you done your research? I do not. I do not like cultural competence. It's so 1980s,
Wait, why do you say that? Because I know that we still, especially on the physical therapy side, I still hear it. Like in my PT class was a cultural competency class, right?
Yeah. I think competency is top down, right? It's this one-time checklist. It's just like, I took this one course and now I'm competent in all these things. Like, how can you truly be competent in somebody's culture, right? And so this humility piece is this lifelong learning. It's this song and dance, right? This fluidity piece is this, like we're fluid. We're occupational beings, right? And so humility allows you to always be in a place of understanding and checking those privileges and saying, like, here's the thing. I was sitting down and there's this one person, big time, and this person represented like the at the time was like this diversity rep on the board, right, on the AOTA board. And they were talking about how they do in-home health therapy, and that, when they went to this Persian household, you cannot acknowledge the dad. You cannot acknowledge the dad. You only have to speak to the mom. And that's what they learned about the culture. And you cannot even talk to anything about the kids to the dad. And I was taken aback because I'm like, not my experience. I lived with my dad. My dad, throughout junior high and high school, like, and all the uncles that uncles in Farsi that I knew were very involved, very engaged with their kids' lives. And so for me, I'm like, this person is making a general statement because they felt like they were culturally competent, but it was their one experience in a household that just happened to also be Iranian, right? And I'm like, no, no, no. That comes from a place of thinking you're culturally competent, that you could speak on a whole culture based on one experience. And this humility piece is I'm coming into this space in a humble to get to know, right? To understand, to better navigate, to better serve. And so for me, I think we get much better outcomes, much better client satisfaction, much better meaning out of the work that we do when we remain in the space of humility and responsiveness and fluidity culturally, right? And that's why we started things like my nonprofit organization I co-founded, COTAD, and other things to give language and visibility to why this work is so critical for the populations that we serve to provide quality care.
And when did you start COTAD?
Oh boy, COTAD. Well, now I got away because I wanted to tell you. I had a story to tell you about DR, but I'll go back to this question now. COTAD. You know, I started COTAD. There's a group of us that started COTAD. What year is it? Oh my God. 2012, 2013. You know, we've been a nonprofit for quite a while. And we started it because DEI wasn't a thing. People were really talking so much about it. Maybe diversity, you know, how to be diverse, what diversity is, but equity, inclusion, like those, you know, and now people are adding words like justice, belonging, you know, access, and all the things that we believe in. But we saw affinity groups, so we wanted to really be a coalition of how we can bring these beliefs of equity and inclusiveness and diversity into serving our profession, but also into making people who might not feel within our profession that they belong seen, right? And, you know, it was the idea that we had as emerging leaders on a napkin, and it was so grassroots and so amazing because one person said, well, you should do a presentation, and they told the wrong group of people to do a presentation. I'll tell you that. We were like, presentation, say less, we're going to do a presentation. And we did a presentation and people ran up. It was just about how do we increase diversity in the student body so that we could ultimately increase diverse representation in the field. People ran up to us, and it was like 12, 13, wasn't not that many people, but they ran up to us like, oh. And you know, at that point, I'm summarizing because I know we don't have that much time, but at that point we knew something special. You know, COTAB was born in this idea. I mean, we didn't have no money. We were all lived all different places in the country. Zoom wasn't Zoom then. You know, we just had an idea. We grassroots started something. Till today we look at it, we are the premier. It is the premier organization that focuses on anti-oppression, anti-racism, and justice, equity, inclusion, all the things in occupational therapy. And it's not just national, but it's global, and it's a nonprofit and sustainable. And we have spaces to where people say, I'm a part of this. I feel seen and I belong. And that wasn't, I had to walk at conferences by myself. I didn't have people, I didn't have my village. I didn't have my tribe. I was just there, but I know I want to be involved. And now to see people graduating already having a tribe, you know, OT just like PT, how many majority white female, and okay, that's great, but also how do we increase representation? Not tokenism, but representation. And so for me, COTAD has been that space, and it has elevated so many leaders in positions of influence for good, right? And all these experiences of engagement, of creating community, of creating coalition, of leadership is now coming, you know, to the forefront to be able to lead the profession nationally, right? And national impact. And I don't take that hat off. I don't take the hat off of, you know, how am I going to decrease barriers and increase access for people, for all people, for minoritized populations, right? And so I bring that passion and that love of building grassroots, mobilizing and organizing for people to the national stage. And, you know, I'm excited to do that.
You know, when I first like heard you speak, talk about like cultural humility. I'm board certified, specialized in women's health. And yet, it was so humbling to hear your story for someone to just be that vulnerable on a stage and just talk about your own journey, your own maternal health, your own women's health, your own personal journey of what you went through. And then me not realize, oh my gosh, women are experiencing that. Women are experiencing this difficult journey with weaning specifically, or not weaning, right? Or still being on the lactation journey. And I just realized this is a person who is everywhere. Like you said, you're not expecting necessarily these things to already be set up, and have the diversity and have the humility and have the fluidity. You know that you must bring that into these spaces. You're bringing yourself. Why that subject? Why that topic at OTs and Pelvic Health Summit? Why did you choose to focus on that specifically?
Mr. Milad just turned 2 weeks ago. Cinco de Mayo, baby. We call him Cinco de Milad. Uh, and he's 2, and Naeem, the dream, is 3. And so we are busy. Um, I was invited to do a TED Talk at this wonderful, Lindsay and Kelsey, incredible, and at the Pelvic Health yeah, yes, yeah. And I was like, okay, I love pelvic floor health. I love maternal health. I love Black maternal health. I love all maternal women's health, all the things, gender affirming care. And I said, but I'm not like the expert. Like this is the space where like they're like gung ho. Like this is what we do. We carry around pelvises. I'm a girly. I get it. I understand. But it's like it's not in my Instagram bio. Like this is pelvic floor health therapist. So I'm like, okay, they want me to come and I was having a hard time. Like, what am I going to narrow in on in 15 minutes with this TED Talk? And I kept on leaning into weaning. And at first I said, well, is this pelvic floor health? I was like, why wouldn't it be? Because the pelvic floor, it's connected to everything, and weaning is part of that. Because as soon as that baby connects onto your breast, you feel your entire uterus, your entire pelvic floor just sucking up. It is connected, right? It's connected spiritually, emotionally, physically, emotionally, mentally, and so I did not want to ignore that part of the lactation journey, right? And I think people always talk about latching and lactation, having a lactation consultant, and getting started, right? But there are far few resources about when that journey comes to an end and how does it come to an end and the implications that it has on baby and mommy or whoever chooses to. I say chest feeding because I feel it's very important to use gender affirming language and gender inclusive language. And so for me, I really want to put language to the experience that I was having. And listen, that was August 24. Baby, it is what month? Oh, it is May 25. It is May 25. And I am still breastfeeding, okay? So I am no expert as far as when to end, but I am in it. And I am an occupational therapist, and occupations is powerful. And to understand the power of occupations is incredible. I believe we are occupational beings, and everything we do is surrounded around occupation. So, as a mother, as a woman, as a wife, as a professional, this occupation of breastfeeding, chest feeding does take over your life. But how do you still navigate? How do you still go do things like this or travel to Arizona to go to the summit while also engaging in this occupation? And so, as much time as it takes up and energy and calories you got to take in, I wanted to give language to also the emotional, and the mental and the physical. And I think that from an OT lens, we get it, the holistic experience. So, I mean, you hear lactation consultant. I was like, well, I want to be the weaning consultant. You know, I want to help people I would call my lactation consultant. She would be like, just leave for a few days or just tell them something else or distract them with a book. I'm like, okay, none of that worked. And I just felt like I was being a failure trying to wean. I'm like, and then I felt like I was rushing my kiddos off because, I was pregnant when my firstborn was 1. That I wasn't ready to finish the journey. And then they said, well, you're going to stop producing milk when you're pregnant. That was a lie. They're not going to want to eat breastfeed because the milk will change. That was a lie. I breastfed all throughout my pregnancy. After I had my baby, Bilal was on and Naeem was on. I had 2 babies on my breast at the same time, and still sometimes today. And it becomes overwhelming. At times, a lot of times, when you're just trying to sleep and you have everything over, you feel overtouched. But also, it's a beautiful journey, and I don't think people spend enough time on the how the journey ends. We talk about the start. No one really looks at throughout the journey, and really no one talks about how the journey ends and how that makes them feel and baby. So I really wanted to talk about that and connect that to pelvic floor and connect that also to privilege. The privilege of being able to breastfeed this long, chest feed this long. The privilege to have access and resources to understanding lactation consultant, a doula, a night nurse, these things, the resources, the access to these resources. And and the advocacy needed for these resources. And I was talking to myself as a woman of color too, and how much I know, but how much I also had to advocate. And my chest feeding, breastfeeding journey at first was difficult. I had cracked nipples. I was like, am I doing this right? I was questioning, am my baby getting enough food? And I stuck it through, and I felt so proud once, I got it, I mastered it. Then me being so type A and wanting to be on the go, I had to stop. I had to sit. I had to be on their time. And that was like, whoa, like slow down. It taught me how to slow down a little bit in so many ways. And then like once you get into this occupation, all the co-occupations around being on a Zoom call and breastfeeding or trying to do some work and breast or just sitting down and maybe scrolling on Instagram or breastfeeding or just connecting and looking into the eyes and having the baby play with your hair and touch your face and play with your other breath, all these things it becomes part of your habits, your roles, routine, your identity, your being, your belonging, all the things, and the habits and the roles and the routines that you have. It's like, do they end? Is it time to end? When is it time to end? Is it time to end because we live in a capitalistic society of consumerism that tells you when you have to go back to work and how fast? Then that's when it ends because now we're pumping all day and our milk stops. Like, is that when it ends? Or, you know, do we have the space and grace to continue it like other countries? They go for 3 4 years sometimes, and it's accepted, it's welcomed. Can we do it in public without people judging you? I mean, there's so much to talk about this, and then once you finally figure it out, it's like, oh, it's ending. Now what? Now what are ways that we bond, or how do we do this, and how do I fill my time, those routines? you know it's and how do my breasts look and feel now, now that there's no milk in them? And what do I talk about sometimes? I talk about it throughout my day. I gotta go breastfeed, I gotta, it's part of my language now. And so I think we need to understand, like, it shifts in our identity shifts, and how that impacts us, and taking a pause and saying, okay, it doesn't just physically that we have to stop this, but mentally, emotionally, and what impact that has. And I think an OT, occupational therapy practitioner, OT, occupational scientist, really has the understanding of all the frames of our environment and everything. So I wanted to talk about that. Not to go on and on. I don't know what else.
We label expertise by someone's occupation. And so when you first started out speaking about that, you said, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert. That's not part of my bio, pelvic health or maternal health. And so that may be true. But in terms of your occupation, which part of that occupation is breastfeeding, chest feeding, right? Is bonding with your newborn. You're as much of an expert as I would be in maybe the world of pelvic health, or I would be in the world of early intervention after a woman has a pelvic surgery or is given birth. So to me, it's just like your talk helped me recognize how my own need to be to have humility, right? Because there's just so much I didn't realize that women go through
Yeah.
who are trying to end that journey. I
Mhm.
understand more about how to start the latch,
Yeah. The
the
light.
lactation journey, but I needed an occupational therapy practitioner. I needed someone who was an expert with that to teach me,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, and I just I felt so excited that, although we work interdisciplinary in your discipline, that you recognize that the humility in that, right? And in our role, in our expertise and our skill set in being able to support individuals in this space of their journey, right? Um, it was well received, and it's built our relationship too. So this topic is I guess really important, really important. And I don't know if I was struggling, but I felt defeated. I felt defeated, and I felt like I'm doing something wrong. And I'm a practitioner. I'm in healthcare, and I'm like, I'm doing something wrong. What is the other? Who else is feeling this way? And I'm like, no, I'm not doing anything wrong. I just started I had to OT the OT. I had to like, okay, wait a minute. Let me take a step back and let me understand what's happening. So I OT'd myself. I'm like, okay. And I was like, let me put this into, yeah, let me put this, because it's not just about 3 trimesters. It's really not even about the fourth trimester when you're trying to figure it all out. It's that fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. Now I'm thinking my baby now, my oldest is now 3. I was walking down the street and I felt like, ooh, I literally felt a jolt. I was like, whoa, I think some postpartum is lifting, and he's 3. I was like, oh, I like literally felt like I'm feeling like a little bit like myself. And when people see me going on the go and doing all these big things, I still feel uh, this postpartum is stuff. I don't know. I'm not trapped in it, but I just feel it. And when I start feeling a little like, oh, I called like my one of my natural, places where you go, you kind of get like your feet, all the things like the colon cleanse lady who does all the other things, right? And I called her and I was like, I'm feeling good. I might want to make an appointment to like do all the fun. I don't know, what do they call it? Natural, like
Like self-care.
self-care, right? Self-care. And she was like, now how old are you? I told her. She was like, oh, now you're about to be perimenopause. I said, stop. No, stop right now. I'm just getting off of this postpartum. I'm feeling, don't try to do it. So I'm like, as women, we just can't catch a break. Can I cuss on here? No, can't catch a break. So no, but I think that it's important for us to embrace every stage, and I'm embracing the actual aspect that I think really the weaning is the journey might end soon. It might end soon. And I actually get sad thinking about it. I actually booked a trip for the AOTA board meeting for June. I take my family everywhere. They come with me everywhere. And this might be the first one that they not, we won't. So it might be the opportunity to start the process. And I'm actually very sad about it. I don't know. I don't know if I'm more sad or my baby, but I feel like I'm setting them up for something, but we'll get through it.
With the AOTA, what's really exciting you about your term? Like what do you want to bring? What fresh energy ideas?
Oh, first I want to bring energy, period, right? I'm excited about that. And I always believe that any leader should leave a space as a better person, right? And also leave a space more vibrant, more unique, more robust, more thriving than they stepped into. So my goal overall is to make our profession all of that and more in our association. I do believe in things, ways, priorities that will get us there. I believe that we could re-envision and reimagine what OTA and OT education looks and feels like, right? So that we could be ahead of the curve and really feel like ahead of the curve and feel like we have a competitive edge, and really looking at what can we bring into our education, what can possibly be taken out, and looking at opportunities to build space for like pelvic floor health, right? Not just having an elective, or maybe somebody who might be a faculty member who's passionate about it, and that one program gets it, but all across the country they don't, because they might not have those. So looking at things that not just might be on trend, but things that are here to stay, and making sure that our students feel prepared in the entrepreneurship and all these types of things, right? Like OTs and PTs don't necessarily want to talk about money or how to start businesses, but they have all these ideas to do it. And where do you learn that? You're not learning it in your programs, but maybe opportunities to have that, right? I also want to prioritize innovative and entrepreneurial practices. Listen, we have this underground world that has bubbled up, this pelvic floor world in the OT space. I know PT has been doing it for a while, and OT has too. But have we been boldly saying this is OT and pelvic floor health? Now we have been, and thanks to all the wonderful people that we can name, from the Lindsay Vestas and the Dr. Carlin and all these the pelvic floor health, all these wonderful people who are doing this work, but they've been doing it for years and just now getting recognition. I want to be able to create a space for innovative and entrepreneurial practitioners, researchers, to be able to feel seen and heard in our association, but also have resources for themselves, right? I also believe that our state and national associations should work together. I think we are stronger together, especially now when we're talking about women's health and gender inclusive care and reproductive health, reproductive justice. These are the things that are really being attacked right now. And I think that I know that if we come together in the advocacy realm and just in in numbers, state and nationally, we'll be more powerful. Even interdisciplinary, right? I do want to increase our and enhance the visibility of our scope of practice. I don't think anymore today in our today that people don't know what OT is. But I do believe people are confused about our scope of practice, because occupations is everything, right? But I do want to go out and be like OT and engineering, OT and architecture, OT and PT, right? I mean, that's the common connection. But can people connect OT and aerospace? Can people connect OT and inclusive design? And I want to be able to enhance the visibility and understanding of our scope of practice so these industries can say, we need OT at the table, right? And so these are a lot of my priorities and many more. I could talk about many more, but also I do believe in increasing diverse representation in our volunteer leadership and access to service and access to leadership. And how do you get involved and engage? I believe the more engaged we are, the more empowered we are, the more powerful we are. And so for me, those are exciting. I'm just excited to be creative. I'm excited to work with people, lift up people. And I have this belief that, you know, obviously community and coalition building, but this belief that we can elevate each other with power with, not power over. I want to share power with you. And that's what we're doing today. We don't have to hoard the pelvic floor health space, but how do we share power with each other to honor and respect each other's skill set and knowledge, but also to bring something even to the table together, which makes us stronger together. And if we can actually go together at the Hill to say, this is why we need reimbursement for pelvic floor health, reproductive health, women's health, gender affirming health, gender inclusive health, all of the things, right? Imagine how we can serve our communities better, what better outcomes we can have when we have the kind of understanding of the positive client satisfaction and outcomes that we provide. We just need funding and resources for that. So I got lots of things to talk about. We're cooking up. We are cooking up, but I'm going to have an incredible board. We're going to have incredible staff at AOTA. We have incredible staff at AOTA, and I have an incredible profession on the side of me, behind me, in front of me, of people. People make up the profession. Incredible people that I lean into that are just, I just love it. I'm getting goosebumps. I love it. I'm 20 years in the game, and here we are. We've arrived.
I I can't thank you enough. Like I'm getting goosebumps just talking to you, just sharing space with you and just hearing and yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your vision and your time and your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.